Boom! We are live, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Welcome to the Nolan Hawkeye Anthony YouTube channel. And I thank all of you for listening, wherever you may be. And of course, however you may be listening. So I told you guys on the NFL draft video for the Iowa Hawkeyes that I would be doing a separate video on the recent transfer of Deacon Hill. I think there was another one that, well, obviously there was Jacob Bostic. And I've had some time to kind of ruminate, marinate on this. There was an article that I read during the week and I posted about it from I believe it's an Oregon Ducks website for SB Nation that discussed Tim Lester and some of the preliminary stuff that they had seen regarding the Iowa Hawkeyes offense. And to sum it up, which we will be reading, it is concerning. And what I'm getting at is, and I'm gonna expound upon this obviously, but what I'm getting at is at first, my initial reaction to Deacon Hill and Jacob Bostic transferring was, so for Jacob Bostic, my initial reaction was, dang, that sucks. We were hearing good things about him. He was in his development. And there's a good chance he would receive at least some snaps this year. He just could not be patient and left. But it sucks, but it is what it is. Then, and again, guys, anytime you lose a 6'2", 6'3", no matter where he is at in his development, even if he is not developing as fast or maybe what you predicted him to be or hoped for him to be, it is still a loss because 6'3" wide receivers that have track speed do not grow on trees. And then Deacon Hill left, and I read some message boards. I had some of my own thoughts on it. And for Deacon Hill, I thought to myself, well, by the way, guys, be sure to smash that subscribe button. If you guys haven't already, support your boy. Let's get this channel to 2,000 subs. We're 800 subs away. We're getting there. We're going to keep it rolling. You guys know I pump out the best content for you guys. And I love doing this. You guys know that. So whatever engagement, your boy appreciates it. Whether you comment on the video, you like, you dislike, it doesn't really matter. Overall, just some engagement is better than nothing. That's how the algorithm works. And listen, I have no shame. That's a shameless plug. You know, it is what it is. If you guys want to donate to the channel, you guys can. I have the links in the description. Plus, you guys can just donate by clicking the dono button on the video. Without further ado, let's get into this. So Deacon Hill, after reading the message boards, and after just kind of thinking about it on my own, and before reading that article, I thought my optimistic thought was, well, the Iowa coaching staff, namely Tim Lester, probably sat down with him after spring camp. They probably gave him a chance at the number 1 spot, aka the number 2 spot, once Cade McNamara got healthy. Because he was the older quarterback, they probably gave him that chance to show his progress and some confidence in him. So they went with him at the 1, aka the number 2, when McNamara got back, to cement himself and his progression as quarterback. Once spring was done and he had not, they probably sat with him again, keep in mind, this is my most optimistic take. They probably sat with him and decided that Marco Lainez would be moving up to number 2 in their most updated depth chart. You know, Kirk Ferentz always talks about how the depth chart is not that big of a deal, and he doesn't really think about it that much. It's more for us, and don't read too much into it. Yada yada yada. But it's surprisingly accurate, by the way. Uh, and they had that conversation with him. He decided the juice wasn't worth the squeeze, and he decided to transfer out after being told that he was going to be QB3 on the depth chart. And honestly, guys, I do think that that's a possibility. Knowing what I know of how the college system works, and just anything that's at a high level, there's a level of transparency, honesty, and competition that breeds itself. I remember when I played Division I water polo, every week there was competition for each position and a depth chart, so to speak, and an honest evaluation and conversation that took place with the coaches. And there's no doubt in my mind that players do have player meetings with the coaches, or coaches meetings with the coaches. So that is a possibility. But my most pessimistic opinion on it, after reading this Oregon Ducks article, and the Oregon Ducks article is a review of Tim Lester, specifically the film that they had from his spring camp, is that Deacon Hill, after seeing Tim Lester, thought to himself, there's nothing has changed. It's the same offense. We've been promised changes, and I need to get out of here before it's too late. That's my most pessimistic, and the same thing with Jacob Bostic. That is my most pessimistic, perhaps realistic possibility on as to why they decided to transfer. So, and ultimately, guys, we will, there's a good chance we will never know. But I really do think that that's a possibility as well. Will Deacon Hill, Jacob Bostic will be missed. Replacing a 6'2", 6'3" wide receiver with track speed is not easy. You can't just go into the transfer portal and find one, especially that's what was Jacob Bostic, a redshirt freshman, redshirt sophomore. I think he was a redshirt freshman. It's not that easy. Okay. And, so I want you guys to take a look here at Jacob Bostic's recruiting profile. And this is for everybody who says that, that Iowa does not land. And we're going to come back to a Facebook post that I had, that Iowa does not land talented wide receivers. It's just not true. I'm going to show you guys the last 3 years of recruits that Iowa has landed at the wide receiver position. So this is Jacob Bostic, 6'2", 183 pounds, out of the state of Illinois. It was a huge recruiting win over Illinois, in-state Illinois. He was an 87, top 15 player in the state of Illinois, high 3-star player, multiple Big Ten offers. This was the year this was the COVID year, the CUF year. Look at his offers: Illinois, Louisville. He probably would have had several more offers had it not been the CUFID year. Pitt. So he had multiple Power 5 offers: Louisville, ACC, Illinois, Big Ten, Iowa, Big Ten, Navy, Air Force, Pitt, ACC. and he was a legitimate track star. So let's take a look at Iowa here, and look at his consensus grade, guys. Some places were even higher on him. He was nearly an 88 on the consensus. Anytime you land a top 750 player, it's a pretty solid get. That's top 750 players are, in my estimation, are legitimate Power Five players, like 90% of them, 90 to 95% of them. So take a look at this, guys. So actually, no, he would have been a redshirt sophomore because Aaron Graves is going into his junior year. Xavier Wampa is going into his junior year. Caleb Johnson, junior year. Kale Vanderbush decided to transfer after I had commented on him in my post spring game analysis. I had told you guys that I had been wondering where he was at. We hadn't seen him. What was he even still on the roster? I really liked him coming out of uh, high school. So that's three players from off the offense that have transferred out. And you look at the defense, that's not the case. You look at the defense, and there's no transfers, really, because all the defensive players, even if they're buried on the depth chart, they ultimately know that they're getting really good coaching, and the defense is really, really good and really, really fun to play for, and they stay. So Xavier Wampa is going into his junior year. So Jacob Bostic would have been going into his redshirt sophomore year. So there's Jacob Bostic. I think he was the only wide receiver that they landed because this was in this class, it was a smaller class. Then we have 2023. And look at this. You have Alex Mata, who, according to On3, was a 4-star wide receiver. He had multiple Big Ten offers, high 3-star, um, track star. I really hope Iowa doesn't lose him. 88. He was nearly a top 500 player. Like I said, multiple Big Ten, Big 12 offers. Solid prospect. Okay. 87, purely 247 sports rating, composite rating of an 88 something. Okay. A grade of a composite grade of an 87 or above means that you are a legitimate potential Power 5 starter. Okay. That's a solid grade. Um, and that's the same for the pure, like a pure 247 sports rating or a pure On3 rating. An 87 or above is a solid Power 5 player. They got a commitment late in the process from Dayton Howard, who's 6'5". And then they landed Terrell Washington Jr., which was kind of a lucky get because Purdue had lost their coach and Jim Brom, and he just wasn't comfortable going to Purdue with a new coaching staff. So he opened up his recruitment, and Iowa's a solid program, and it just made sense all the way around. It happened in a relatively short period of time, and it worked out. So those are the two. And then from last year's class, keep in mind, guys, this is what Iowa has been able to get in spite of a historically bad offensive statistical output team, not just like for the year, but in the history of college sports. Iowa landed last year. They landed KJ Parker, who was an 88. Okay. Now, again, are they landing 4-star guys across the board? No. But they consistently have landed 87 to 88 to low 4-star guys the past 3 to 5 years. Reese Vanderzee, 87, had multiple Big Ten offers, including some Big 12 offers from Kansas State, Iowa State. So it's just this whole thing that Iowa does not land talented wide receivers is a load of crap. It just is. All right, so yes, it sucks that they're losing him. They are in on gosh, my computer is sucking right now. I'm gonna have to get it fixed. They are in on Missouri State wide receiver transfer. Let me see where he's at. They are in on this Dode, if it ever wants to pull up, Raylan Sharp, and he's considered a four-star transfer portal target by rivals for what it's worth. And then they are also in on, I saw some articles about a defensive lineman from, let's see if we can find it. There's Raylan Sharp. There was one more. Oh, it was a defensive line prospect. And then we're going to go back to the article and my Facebook post. Um, man. Finally, I found it. It's fun. It's so annoying how like for like weeks or days you can find the article or thing that you want, but in the moment when you need to have it there, it's nowhere to be found. But the defensive line target that they're after is D tackle JVR Suggs. I don't know how in the mix they are. Let's read this here. Um, looks like we won't be able to read it. You're gonna have to subscribe. Uh, gives high marks to Arkansas. He's from Grand Valley State. Seen his recruiting take off at Arkansas for official visit. Let's see if it says where he's going to. Arkansas offered him on Thursday. In the 6 days he has been in the portal, Suggs has picked up offers from Central Michigan, Coastal Carolina, Iowa, Wisconsin, Kansas State. Um, right now, scheduled Wisconsin will be Monday or Tuesday, Suggs said. After that, it's open right now, but there should be a decision by either today or tomorrow. Tuesday, decision about visits. So I don't know how high Iowa is on his list, but that's possibly a name to keep an eye on. I don't want to stick on that too long. So let's read this post. Like I said, the main thing I wanted to say there is this whole thing about Iowa not receiving decent talent at the wide receiver position is a load of crap. It's not true. Is it the same as Ohio State or Michigan? Of course not. Or Alabama? Of course not. But it's certainly not as bad as what Iowa's statistical output is. Um, it's better than most Power Five schools, quite frankly. If you look at the all around talent, now what Iowa is able to do once they get on campus, that's a different matter entirely. So but at least what they are coming out of high school is not as bad as something. So I thought about this the other day, and I wrote this. Iowa totally. Let's click on it. See if I can view post. That's all right. Iowa totally wasted their time with Joey Labus. Think about this. They had Labus as the one, and he did fairly well against Kentucky. Then Deacon transfers in, and they immediate. Come on, Nolan, can't even spell they correctly, and they immediately move him to second string and eventually to first string, taking a majority of Labus's reps. Let's be honest, Hill did not play well last year. He was a below average statistical quarterback. Labus transfers, then Hill takes a majority of the first string reps that could have been given to Lainez, only to transfer before the season. What a huge waste and mismanagement of the talent in the quarterback room. And it's true. I mean, I was thinking about it, like I was super high on Joey Labus. And if you really think about it, Iowa lost out on Joey Labus, a guy that they recruited straight out of high school, which had it not been the COVID year, he was a 4-star rated quarterback by 247 Sports. Had it not been the COVID year, he would have likely had far more offers than what he did. Um, he likely would have had far more offers than he did. They have him redshirt. He plays in the Kentucky game due to an injury at quarterback. And Spencer Petras, essentially moving on and graduating, or so we thought. We think that he's going to be the number one quarterback. Then they decide to get Cade McNamara, which honestly, that wasn't a bad pickup. But they also land Deacon Hill because John Budemeyer had the connection with him after he had been committed to like St. Francis or like St. Thomas or some school like that, like a D2, D3 school. And now, of course, Labus did get injured, but he was good to go mid-season. And despite the pressure that was put on Kirk Ferentz by the media, he continuously shared confidence in Deacon Hill, almost stubbornly, at all costs, not going with Joey Labus at all costs, because most programs, including Iowa, have this tendency that when they make a decision, they don't want that decision to be proven wrong. So they dig a deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper hole until there's nothing left and that person has to transfer out or somebody has to be fired or something like that. And, they go with Deacon Hill. Then Joey Labus transfers out because by the time the bowl game rolled around, Labus had decided to leave Iowa. So Marco Lainez was the 2 with Cade McNamara injured. Deacon Hill plays in that game. He plays abysmally. Iowa puts in Marco Lainez, and Marco Lainez plays much better than Deacon Hill played. They come into the offseason. They still stick with Deacon Hill as the de facto 2, but 1 due to Cade McNamara being injured. They give all those reps to Deacon Hill, only for him to still look terrible. And honestly, if you read Tim Lester's comments, he had a lot of issues with Deacon Hill, namely his feet, his positioning. He had a good arm, but his footwork, which is critically important for quarterbacks, was not that good. Only for him to transfer out. Now, like I said, is it the end of the world that for one spring they decided to, if you just look at that one spring in a vacuum, is it the end of the world that they decided to go with Deacon Hill and show some confidence in him? No, it's not. But if you take it in its entirety, Iowa had multiple chances to move off of him. And not only that, but multiple things were brought down en route to playing Deacon Hill. You lose snaps for Marco Lainez, developmental snaps, even and it'd be one thing if Marco Lainez was not showing any promise, but he actually is showing promise, as a lot of us knew he would, based off of the tape that we had seen from his quarterback coach Tony Racioppi, or whatever his name is. You look at it in its entirety, and it's just like this one big mismanagement at the quarterback position. This is a side note here, but like I said, in a vacuum, not so bad, but in its entirety, bad, very bad. You lose reps for a quarterback in development. Well, two quarterbacks in development in Joey Labus and Marco Lainez. You end up losing one of the quarterbacks entirely, who looks like he's going to be the starting quarterback for Central Michigan or Ball State or whatever school he transferred to. And I looked at his spring ball numbers. They were actually really good. Now, again, it's spring ball and it's MAC level competition, but it's still Division I competition. This is a side note. I wish I had this for the video I did for the NFL draft video. Iowa, yet again, one of the top schools at producing NFL talent. They were first, second, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth, 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th, 14th, 15th. They were tied for 16th at with multiple other schools regarding players drafted with 4. All right, guys, let's move on. I want to read this article from, and you guys can see that in the Facebook group that I posted regarding the Iowa Hawkeyes and their offense. Like I said, this was from the SB group, or the Iowa Hawkeyes, not the Iowa Hawkeyes. This was from the SB Nation Oregon Ducks website. So it's going to take me a second to get this pulled up. All right, guys, I finally found it. So here we go. Like I said, when you want to find it, you can never find it. So, Duck Dive Iowa Football 2024 preview. All right. Special thanks. All right. Offense. Rush success below average. Rush yards per carry below average. Rush explosive terrible. You guys can see the numbers here. 125th, 2020. So they under Brian Ferentz, they went backwards. F plus offense, 85th, 98th, 125th. Iowa has fielded one of the worst offenses in the country the last 3 seasons that I charted. And 2023 was the worst iteration yet. Iowa has fielded, this is the product of both ephemeral factors, factors, the wrong person at certain key spots, some bad injury luck, poor in-game decision-making that could be resolved in a single offseason, but simply hadn't been. And structural factors in roster management that would take years to fix, even if strong cultural forces didn't prevent the staff from identifying the problems. While it would be difficult for the Hawkeyes to get any worse on offense, and some of their historically awful performance in 2023 was due to bad luck that can't possibly last forever, I think the prospects for fixing either set of factors are dim in 2024. Damn. That's not good. Don't the only staff change was replacing Brian Ferentz. That's true. And I said that when the whole replacement at OC was going on, I said it doesn't make sense that they're only going to get rid of Brian Ferentz. Now, they did part ways with Kelton Copeland only to replace him with somebody that was already on the staff. Now, we'll see. Maybe John Budemeyer, in fairness, John Budemeyer came from the outside. He came from Wisconsin. He's not a homegrown Iowa person. He's only been there for like 1 or 2 years now. But I was expecting Iowa to go after somebody outside the building, quite frankly. With new OC and quarterback coach Tim Lester. He was the head coach at Western Michigan for 6 years after PJ Fleck left for Minnesota from 2017 through 2022, but was fired after the offense fell off in his watch twice. First when taken over from Fleck, and again after a severe downturn from a COOF season high. These were Western Michigan's offensive rankings in F+ advanced statistics during their tenure. So that's not what Iowa's offense was. That's what the program is called, F+. So you guys can see this is PJ Fleck's offense consistently going up. And you can see with Lester, they went up and then they took a sharp turn downward drastically. On the podcast, Trent noted a greater emphasis on pre-snap motions in spring practices, as well as a discussion about more RPOs. But otherwise, the offense looked structurally almost identical in the spring game to me. A heavy usage of 12 personnel and most of the offense going through the inside run game and short passes to the tight ends. Now, in fairness, we did hear from from Jay Higgins that, he was bragging up the Iowa offense, saying that there's a ton of motion, that this was the first time that they ever had to change things defensively because of the new changes, and Iowa's offense was looking really good. And he did mention that Iowa, basically in the spring game and in the open practice, did not run all of their stuff because the cameras were on, and his guess, wink wink, was because the cameras were on and he did not want to Tim Lester did not want to give away his offensive scheme and play calling and put it on camera. Okay, maybe, if I'm being the most optimistic I can be, okay, that's fair. And we can be hopeful for that. I think it's probably halfway true, but not entirely true. I don't think it's as pronounced as Jay Higgins is trying to make it seem. He's just being a good teammate. My opinion is that Brian Ferentz deserved the well-publicized criticism he received as an ineffective play caller, particularly on third downs, which had collapsed to an atrocious 12% success rate during meaningful play over the last 3 seasons. But that was only part of the problem. Ferentz dealt with completely ineffective quarterback play from Spencer Petras and Deacon Hill, in addition to an uncomfortable injury to quarterback McNamara, an overall lack of talent up and down the roster, except for the tight ends who kept getting hurt, and an offensive line that just wasn't good enough for this kind of run-heavy scheme. Guys, I have been saying that for multiple years now. I have said, if you are going to be a run-heavy, run-specific team that uses that as the building block for your offense, as the thing that sets up the pass rather than the other way around, or kind of a mix and match of both, then you have to have a good run game. But Iowa doesn't. They haven't for the past 4 years. Honestly, guys, think of the last team that Iowa had that legitimately had a solid run game. The last that I can think of was like LaShawn Daniels Jordan Kanziri and Akram Wadley when they were together, or like Akram Wadley's last year. That's the last time I can think. Maybe for parts of Tyler Goodson's career, maybe like his first or second year, and that's it. But it's not like Iowa has been like Wisconsin under Paul Chryst or anything like that. Heck no. Let's keep reading. With those constraints, I don't think even the most inspired play calling would have been much more effective. Petrus left after 2022, and McNamara, who transferred in from Michigan as a low four-star recruit, became the new starter. He had been the starter and played every game on a talented Michigan roster in 2021, putting up almost perfectly FBS median 141.9 NCAA passer rating that year. So essentially, he was an average quarterback. In 2022, Michigan coach Harbaugh had an open competition between McNamara and J.J. McCarthy, who subsequently went in the first round, but you could argue was large in part to his high school rating mixed with Michigan's national success, rather than his pure quarterback talent that he displayed at the quarterback level. During their very soft non-conference schedule, it was clear that McNamara got outplayed and then was hurt by week 3. McCarthy won the job and kept it for the remainder of 2022 and 2023. McNamara saw the writing on the wall, had surgery right away, and transferred out. At Iowa in 2023, McNamara played in 5 games with a miserable 106.2 passer rating, more than 2 standard deviations below median, which Trent said on the podcast was partially due to injuring his quadriceps during a preseason exhibition and playing hurt. McNamara blew out his ACL during a scramble in week 5 against Michigan State and missed the rest of last season. Deacon Hill played out the remainder of 2023 with an almost unfathomable 87.4 passer rating. Trent and I discussed him on the podcast as a non-viable option, and sure enough, the next day, Hill transferred out. The only other quarterback currently on scholarship is quarterback Marco Lainez, who threw a few passes in a bowl game and somehow looked worse. Actually, I disagree with that. He looked better than Deacon Hill. So that just could be a difference of opinion. Marco Lainez, I wouldn't say markedly looked better, but there were elements to his game that maybe not the passing, but the game management, the run, the flow of the offense with him under center was better when he was in there. And you take that and consider that he was a true freshman, and it wasn't that bad. So, all right. They'll get a true freshman mid 3-star. Not true. I mean, it all around that's true, but he's a 4-star by 247 Sports, and he was a 4-star by 2 of the recruiting services. Mid 3-star in the fall named James Razor, who Trent says is a more runner than a passer. McNamara still wasn't healthy enough to play in the spring game, and Trent said he looked even less comfortable on the sideline in spring than he did during warmups of the bowl game. Iowa's spring game wasn't even televised. Trent was there in person, and I acquired video from another source, so our viewing angles were different, and I wasn't able to see McNamara on mine. Clearly, Iowa will be searching the transfer portal for a backup option to McNamara given his health history. By the way, guys, no, they will, but they won't get anybody. I don't want you guys to get your hopes up. Iowa is going to roll with who they have, which is going to be Cade McNamara, Marco Lainez, and James Razor. Those are going to be the three scholarship quarterbacks that Iowa is going to have on the roster next year. They're not going to land anybody else because Iowa, when they look at the transfer portal, they're going to realize, if they haven't already, that anybody who is going to be willing to come to their school either is not talented enough or has major issues that they don't want to deal with. Anybody with even a modicum of talent is going to transfer elsewhere because they know that Cade McNamara is going to be the quarterback one, and the offense sucks. But Trent said he believes they'll be looking for someone to compete with McNamara for the starting job. And that sounds logical to me. I think even if he is healthy and fights off this hypothetical challenge from a transfer quarterback, I don't have reason to expect McNamara can get back up to an FBS average level of play, since that's all he could do at Michigan with a much better surrounding cast. That's a fair point. Plus, he's missed so much developmental time. Those are two really good points. He has. And that's a major concern. The guy has spent much of his career injured. It's true that even a below average quarterback would be an improvement over Hill and Petrus the last several seasons, several years. But it would take a truly exceptional quarterback to overcome the rest of Iowa's offensive challenges. And I don't see that in the room or as a reasonable pickup opportunity given the currently perilous state of the transfer portal, or parlous. The running back unit returns everyone from last year. The two backs were number 4 running back LaShawn Williams and number 2 Caleb Johnson, who averaged over 4 yards per carry. Though, as Trent noted, Johnson had a more impressive freshman season with over 5 yards per carry. The primary backup was Josiah Patterson, and they also had a couple of true freshmen last year in 4 games who retained red shirts. I don't think there are any real burners in this room in terms of blazing top end speed, and there was surprisingly little use of them as receivers out of the backfield, which is probably the greatest possibility of schematic difference between Ferentz and Lester, which I do disagree with because Terrell Washington was specifically used as a running back. And I know I saw multiple passes to LaShawn Williams and Kamari Moulton, as well as we know Terrell Washington has been moved outside for a lot of the practices of spring. But overall, I think this is a solid and experienced group. I agree. And Trent and I agreed on the podcast that any issues in the run game don't stem from the backs making mistakes in terms of lane selection or breaking weak tackles. The tight end unit is where Iowa wants to butter its bread, and the NFL is littered with former Iowa tight ends. One of the reasons that the Hawkeyes offense last year really cratered was that 2 of their most talented, Eric All, who went in the 4th round, and tight end Lachey, who also would have likely been drafted, both got hurt, all in week 7, and Lachey in week 3, and they missed the rest of the season. We saw a lot more of tight end Ostranga and former FCS transfer Steven Stilianos as a result, who were fine but not nearly as productive, with that pair averaging nearly 7 yards per target fewer and 15 percentage points in personnel per target success rate lower than the pair All and Lachey. Assuming that Lachey stays, I'm going to skip part of this, guys, because it's such a long article and my back is starting to hurt. Assuming that Lachey stays healthy and available all year, the 2024 tight end situation would likely be better than the 2023 situation. I somewhat agree with that. I think Iowa does have a ton of depth and a ton of talent in the room, but Iowa had one of the best tight end groups in the country when they were healthy in All and Lachey. Unless Ostranga is able, which is definitely possible, unless he is able to take a huge step, and obviously Lachey will likely be at the very least slightly improved from what he was last year. So that's, if you look at the 2 years, you'll have Lachey and all here, you'll have Lachey this year take a slight uptick, but to equal where they were last year, Ostrenga is definitely going to have to take a pretty sizable step forward. So I kind of disagree with that, but I see what he's saying. I mean, it's still a talented group because Lachey is the number one tight end in the country according to most draft mock boards. And Ostrenga definitely has a ton of upside, and I'm very excited. And plus, you had Zach Ortworth see some snaps as a true freshman. He'll likely have taken a step forward. So the room has a ton of upside. But if you look at the top two, ultimately it's going to come down to whether Ostrenga is able to take a sizable step forward from last year because all was a fourth round selection. Okay. You had two guys last year on top of what they had behind them, two guys that were NFL draft. Lachey, had he stayed healthy, would have been drafted at the very least where Eric All was drafted. When they had Bull out for only a few weeks. 2023 situation when they had both All and Lachey, but only for a few weeks. However, I don't think the talent profile here really supports sticking with 12 personnel in 2024 as often as they have in the past. The average has been 86% of snaps over the last 3 seasons. And in my opinion, this is ripe for going to 11 personnel to really feature Lachey exclusively and otherwise open up the offense. But based on the spring game and talking with Trent, I have my doubts that's in the cards. Another reason that I think going to an 11 personnel is unlikely is how undermanned the wide receiver room is. Again, I disagree with that. I think there's plenty of talent in the room. I've showed you guys. Yes, Jacob Bostic transferred out, but Seth Anderson and Caleb Seth Anderson did not play in the spring game. I think that Iowa has three solid inside, more speedy wide receivers in Caden Wetchen, Caleb Brown, and Seth Anderson. What they need is they need an outside receiver. And hopefully Jarriett Bowie or Dayton Howe. And I don't think Jarriett Bowie is going to be that guy because he's more of a Amir Smith Marset type rather than a more Brandon Smith type. But the room is going to be based off of those guys. Now we'll see if Iowa can land one or two uh, tar- uh, tar- uh, targets in the portal. But it just assuming they have everybody that they have, I think they have. Let me put it to you this way: they have what is needed to move the chains. Are they going to have a high flying, up and down wide receiver core that is one of the best in the Big Ten? No, but as long as they're average, they'll be fine. And especially if Caleb Brown is able to take a substantial leap forward, let's keep it real. Sometimes a wide receiver room can be led and carried by just one guy. That's how talented he is. But I don't want you guys to bank on that. I'm not banking on that because, again, that would have to assume that Iowa is really good at developing wide receivers, which they, other than Amir Smith Marset and Brandon Smith, that hasn't really been evidence to be true. But suffice it to say, I think they have enough pieces to get the job done, which is all they need to do. Four receivers got all targets last year for a combined 745 total yards. For comparison, that's about half of what Oregon's Troy Franklin got alone. Number 6, Seth Anderson. Number 3, Caleb Brown, Nico Reganey, and Deontay Vines. Anderson and Brown return, but Reganey Ragaini, aka Ragaini, and Vines have departed, as has Jacob Bostic, who transferred out without seeing the field. They all, which, as I said at the beginning of the video, was a big loss. They also return unrated JUCO number 21 wide receiver Wetson, who was only used on sweeps last year and had no catches, plus three redshirt freshmen, Jarriett Bowie, Dayton Howard, and Alex Mata. I also saw a walk-on junior getting some catches in the spring, Alex Wick. So there's only 5 scholarship returners plus a couple of true freshmen in the room in 2024, and just 2 have caught a ball for Iowa. Furthermore, Anderson and Mata were both injured and sat out the spring game. And Trent said that Mata's injury was significant, and he spotted him using a scooter. So I'm not sure when he might be available. So what we heard, it's not that significant. So you guys can see some of their intel is not. I'm not reading this because all of their intel is accurate. I'm reading this more to illustrate whether whether there has been legitimate changes to the offense to raise optimism with regards to Tim Lester. A complicating factor is that Brown is far and away the most talented skill player they have. He was a former high 4-star for Ohio State, though he played running back in high school, and has the highest per play effectiveness rate on my tally sheet. But he's a 5'9" slot receiver and only came on the field during the tiny minority of snaps when they went to 11 personnel last year. Trent asserted on the podcast that he'll be moved to Z receiver in 2024, since this would be the most logical move. I'd agree that playing Brown as often as possible is Iowa's best strategy, but it's just not what I saw happening in the spring game. Instead, it was more of the same, with Brown playing out of the slot and not on the field during the vast majority of reps, which were 12 personnel. And in fact, I only saw him with the second unit. Unless Lester is planning a big change to watch out for in fall, I think keeping Brown on the bench and not significantly investing and building out the wide receiver room through portal additions will be exhibit A that this offense is not serious about making substantive changes. Let me read that again. Unless Lester is planning a big change to watch out for in the fall, I think keeping Brown on the bench and not significantly investing in building out the wide receiver room through portal additions will be exhibit A that this offense is not serious about making substantive changes. Iowa's offensive line returned just about everybody in what's been a very stable group for the last several years. In 2023, the starters were Richmond, left tackle Richmond, left guard DeYoung, center Logan Jones, right guard Colby, right tackle Dunker. And everybody is back. Of course, Caden Proctor is not going to be there, all of whom are upperclassmen, had been previous year starters and returned in 2024. So here's my thing about the offensive line. I think they're going to be fine. I think they're going to be solid. They return a ton of experience. My question mark for them is, will they have a dude that can the running back or whatever the case may be on the offense that they can get behind and pull him and make him just have some massive blocks and really carry the offense to where it needs to go. As of now, no. Do I think Iowa has a few guys that could possibly be that? Well, yeah. I mean, each guy has some things that are highly desirable. Like, for example, Logan Jones is highly athletic, has really good testing numbers, and was very raw the last 2 years. Maybe this year is the year that he puts it all together and takes a massive Tyler Linderbaum step forward. Okay. Mason Richmond, very talented, has multiple years of experience. Maybe this is the year that he takes a huge step forward. Connor Colby, same thing as Mason Richmond, but the difference is he has settled into his more comfortable position, which is guard. So Jennings Dunker was a bit raw, and we've seen him come on of late. If he's able to take as big of a step forward this year as he has the last couple of years, maybe he becomes that dude. I mean, so we'll see, we'll see. But as of now, they don't have that dude. They have a solid core of guys. By the way, Rusty Feth was one of the starters for Iowa, not DeYoung. Um, they did add Kale Baroud, who's likely playable, but the thing is he's likely going to be a center. So there's certainly plenty of experience and depth on this line, and I expect that they would be able to handle an injury or two without dipping at all from their baseline level of performance. Trent also noted that Richmond was playing through an undisclosed injury last year, and he's hoping for a bounce back in his performance. So that's another reason why he might become the dude. And that head coach Kirk Ferentz, with his background as an O-line coach, has a tendency for tinkering with O-line composition, and so that this lineup may not be as quite straightforward as it appears. I think it's going to be. I think that that's going to be what the lineup is. It's my opinion that they could use a shakeup. Perhaps the biggest unexpected observation in 3 years of charting Iowa was that the offensive line play, particularly in the run game, was simply not good enough for an offense that signals so blatantly how much they're going to run. Every one of the interior linemen has a per play error rate in run blocking over 19% on my tally sheet, which is shocking for a group of veterans on a run heavy scheme. I agree. By formation, personnel, and tight end alignment packed in close, the Hawkeyes honestly signal a run on over 68% of first downs, yet are only successful on 43% of them over the last 3 seasons. And both figures are exacerbated in 2023 alone. Once they fail on first down, it's downhill from there. This is not new. We've known this. With miserable success rates, both running and passing in second and medium/long and third and medium/long. No situation play call by variant success higher than 32%, by variate success higher than 32%, and some as low as 11%. They're pretty good in short yardage, getting the 3 yards or fewer necessary to convert, but that's all they get. So Iowa either needs to get substantially more effective at running the ball to put the rest of their offense in better situations, or needs to have a more open passing offense so they can more readily recover from being behind the chain so much. Ideally, both. But between dim portal prospects at quarterback and wide receiver, doubts about how much Lester is willing or capable of changing the offense, and an offensive line that appears to be handcuffed to underperforming upperclassmen, I'm hard pressed to predict either will happen. So there you guys have it. The rest is on the defense. I thought that that was an excellent breakdown. Gosh, guys, my back is killing me. The backups are somewhat difficult to predict because we saw so little of them, because the most talented on paper and experienced number 4 entering or sat out the spring game. Instead, I was seeing a walk-on sophomore Choleric play free safety with twos alongside redshirt freshman DB Lutmer at BS, who's the least talented in the room according to 247 composite. But Trent said that Parker has gone out of his way to mention Lutmer multiple times, and he's betting that means Lutmer is an up-and-comer. I haven't seen the other two redshirt freshmen, DB Davis or DB Tate, on the field in the spring game at all. Interestingly, in the spring game with Harris sitting out, the ones were a healthy Hall and Nestor, with Lee, a low 3-star junior who'd never seen the field before. The ratings don't really matter much for the defense because, you can take athletes and turn them into really good defenders, as Phil Parker has done. Number 20 quarterback Hilson on the second team. I asked Trent if he had just seen the experienced junior Lee lose his job to the true sophomore Nestor, and he responded that this was, hold on, on the field on the second team. And he responded that this was quite possible since the staff has been very high on Nestor lately. Interesting. But it says that the ones were a healthy Hall and Nestor with Lee, a low who'd never seen the field before. Oh, on the second team. All right, guys. So that's going to do it. Um, at any rate, it'll certainly be those four, the three experienced returners from last year plus Nestor in the rotation. Both Trent and I think Harris and Lee will get the start in the opener simply because they had the most rest under their reps under their belt. But it's possible that this is fluid and the balance of playing time shifts as the season goes. All right, guys, that is going to do it for me. My back is killing me. My closing thoughts are I'm concerned. I am. Obviously this article didn't have everything right by my estimation, but there were definitely some things that, like I said, I was reading it more to review the personnel packages and whether the offense looks substantively different. And according to this person, it does not. Substantively different. How to say that better. And that's concerning. Is it possible that Jay Higgins is correct and Lester simply did not want to show everything that the offense has and put everything on tape, kind of hoping to uh, camouflage the real offense so that every team is surprised by the new and improved Iowa offense when the season rolls around? Maybe. I mean, I wouldn't put it past them. Teams do it all the time. That's one of the drawbacks to the spring game is it does put tape on your team. But let's keep it real. I mean, Iowa also does have a hint of tendency and foreshadowing to their offense that people have talked about for years. You know exactly what Iowa's going to do. You know exactly what play they're going to run, and they're just going to do it. That sort of thing. So, again, time will tell. We will only truly know when the season rolls around. But if this person is being accurate and Higgins is not accurate, this is worrisome because, and I told you guys that the Iowa media loves, you got to understand, the Iowa media is polarizing one way or the other. They love to criticize the coaches when they're doing poorly because they know fans will like that. And they like to hype up every year the offense and the offense looking improved and new and better so that you become optimistic and buy tickets and have hope that this year will be different from last year, when the evidence suggests that that's not going to be the case, at least under Brian Ferentz. And I would say by and large, it has been more often the case under Kirk Ferentz than not that it does not change. So, and when Tim Lester came in, the two criticisms of him, well, one was a direct criticism of him and one was a criticism of the hire and kind of like a systemic problem. The criticism of Lester was that when he had a roster full of his guys towards the end of his career at Western Michigan, the offense slid down substantially. In other words, when he was early on and he still had a lot of PJ Fleck guys, they were better. And it was a huge concern that they had slid off so badly once Lester had his team and had been the coach of the team far more. You would expect that if you're out of school for 5 years, that the fourth and the fifth year would be the best year rather than the first and the second. Now, that's not always the case, but, for the most part, that's what you would think. And then the other was that would Kirk Ferentz be willing to give the offense or more of the offense and more of the decision making over to the offensive coordinator and the overall development of the offense to the offensive coordinator? Time will tell, guys. Time will tell. I'm leaning towards, I'll just keep it real with you guys. I'm leaning towards we're not really seeing much that's different. And just to finish my point about the Iowa media, what we heard a lot about, and I joked about this when I was talking to you guys, I told you guys that, the Iowa media is polarizing one way or the other. And it becomes a biased, um, I'm blanking on the word for. So it ultimately becomes an echo chamber of similar talking points. And what we heard a lot about was the motion. The motion. Iowa has a ton of motion. They have a ton, much more motion. Woo, motion. Much more pre-snap motion. All of this, which I suppose is a little bit better. But if you really, really get down to it, that's not really that much. Like if you're pretty much running the same route trees and running the same formations and personnel packages, that's basically like fool's gold. That's basically like you adding a wrinkle for show and to make people think that you're doing something different when you're really not. So I'm not super optimistic, guys. I'm not on Tim Lester right now. After reading that, I know it's just one article. We will see as time goes on, but I did want to read that to you guys and let you guys uh kind of chew on that. And I'm curious what you guys have to think in the comment section. All right, guys, like, comment, share, subscribe. You guys know the drill. And last but not least, DBAP, don't be a pussy will on facts or feelings because your feelings just don't matter. Love you guys. See you guys next time. Go Hawks. Bye-bye.